Hello, and welcome to another episode of Intune.training, the place to learn how to use Microsoft Intune, the Steve and Adam show. Steve and Adam.
So I'm Steve, and this is Adam.
Wait a second. What's going on?
What are you doing in my room?
What are you doing in my room? Hey, Steve.
Hey, Adam, how are you going?
Good, man. Thanks for coming to visit.
I'm loving it. It's got to be a bit of fun.
I think it's been 4 years since we did a side-by-side video.
It is. It has. It's just amazing.
Yeah, last time we were sitting next to each other with one camera, and it was really fun.
And we've learned technology now.
Yes, just a little bit. Yeah. So anyway, we're gonna have a good time, and we figured, well, while we're hanging out, let's go ahead and take advantage of our recording opportunity here.
Exactly.
We're in between Steve jumping between MMS and Ignite.
Yep.
So by the time you watch this, Ignite will have already occurred.
Yes.
But he's very excited. His first time speaking.
Yeah,
at Ignite.
I get to speak at Ignite.
It's pretty cool, dude.
Yeah, it is.
Speaking of Ignite, let's talk about compliance policies.
how you can ignite your environment.
Something like
How
that.
you can set fire to your environment with one click of a button.
Yes, you can.
Can you do it?
Yes, let's give it a go. So in our earlier videos, we've alluded to compliance policies. We said this was coming up next. We've talked about conditional access just a little bit.
Yep.
So this all ties into security of your devices and how to ensure that the devices are in a state that meets your baseline security requirements. So that's essentially what we're going to be digging into. I think the main thing to call out at the beginning here is that we are going to string all of the OSs together in this video. The first portion of this will cover all of the general settings related to compliance policies and how to, the wizard's the same for each one. So we're going to essentially set up the policies so that they work for each of the OSs. Now there are limitations, and we'll call those out as we get there. And then we will kind of string these together. We've in this session right now, we can do Windows and Linux. We don't necessarily have all of the equipment for the Mac OS, the Chromebook, and iOS and Android devices. But so we'll be in different clothes when we finish those, and so those will be tacked on in post as we do this.
Although we might be in the same clothes, we'll just be in different rooms.
Yes.
Well, one of us.
Yeah. So to get us started, going to share my machine.
Yep.
That has my what's your dinky on it. So I'm in the Intune portal.
Yep.
So I'll start back at the top here.
Yes, we always start at the top.
Yeah. So we'll notice that Intune has got a fresh look. We'll just skip past that.
There we go. And you can see that we're using the preview blade for devices.
And I'm just going to collapse the side here.
Cool. And then what you'll see on the left-hand side is underneath managed devices, you'll see compliance. And this is where, when we talk about compliance, this is about, is the device healthy and are you able to do stuff on it? And why is that important? Well, this is where it comes down to that zero trust mentality. We don't trust anything until we have some sort of way of verifying that it is compliant, that it is healthy, that it is meeting a minimum bar of trust. In our environment, we're going to be keeping it very simple. We're going to be setting up is device encrypted, and we'll talk through that in a minute. The other thing that we can talk about in here as well is your device can be non-compliant, but you still have access to corporate resources, which we'll also demonstrate as well.
Yep.
So let's start off very simply. Actually, let's start off with compliance settings first, Adam.
All right.
So this one here, that first setting at the top of the screen, mark devices compliant. Mark devices with no compliance policies assigned as compliant or non-compliant. So if you leave this as compliant, every device in your environment will be compliant unless you've explicitly assigned a compliance policy to say you are not compliant.
And we don't want to do that.
And you should not want to do that in your environment either.
Yep.
because you should always have a compliance policy assigned to your tenant.
Now,
to devices.
What's great here is that we've not done anything to prevent access. We're just setting the status of compliance for the device at this point.
Correct.
So this won't have a negative impact on company resource access, but users in their company portal and other places will see a note that says your device is not compliant until they reach a compliant state. So anyway, this is the first step in the process. So we'll hit save.
Exactly. So then from there, there's also now a new option there, which is the retire non-compliant devices. And this is where you can go and state your option to retire the devices. So if we had devices that were non-compliant for an extended period or a period of time, you could tick the box in front of the device name and go retire all devices or retire selected devices.
Yep. And
it means that they no longer have access to resources.
I've not tried that one out, so I guess we'll learn it all together here as we go. Yep. The notifications tab is further down in the process. We'll come back here, but essentially you can create custom notifications, templates to be used with your policies.
Exactly.
And then we'll just, while we're here, the scripts node is additionally used for custom compliance policies, and I believe that one's also the one that we have to do for Linux.
Correct.
Yep.
Yep.
So we'll visit that one later.
Script based
as well.
Cool. So now we're going to go to policies, and we're going to start very simply. We're going to select our platform that is Windows 10 and later, and then we're going to hit create. We're going to give it a sensible name of emojis.
No, we're gonna, come on.
Okay. And we're going to hit next. From here, you can see that there is a half a dozen options of policies that we can set. So the first one is the custom compliance. This is actually referring to the scripts that Adam alluded to previously. In this scenario, we're not going to go through this. We actually did a video on this 6 months ago. Do recommend checking it out, but we more than likely will reassess it and readdress it in a later video.
Yeah,
but it's just a little bit more convoluted, and
the thing is, there's a
I think it's actually in the yeah, there we go.
Yeah, but there's a sample discovery script for Windows and for Linux. So if you want to get into that, this is how you would do that, and we'll do it in the Linux one, so you'll at least see the experience there. But we're not going to do it for the Windows bit.
Device health. So this one looks good. It makes sense, right? Well, device Microsoft attestation runs at startup, and it says at boot time. It doesn't check continually. So can you do this for secure boot and code integrity? Sure, that's highly recommended. For BitLocker, yeah, you can do that. But if it's a brand new computer and then you don't reboot, it won't get compliant if you hit check status.
Now, Steve, didn't we talk about this previously on the attestation service where I think at the time, and maybe that's changed, this required an on-prem attestation service that you connected to?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so that's actually a change since the last time we even looked at this.
Yeah, we actually got corrected on that one in the video comments.
Yeah.
That you can do it without it. You can just go in and it runs at boot time. So, but what we do recommend,
and you can click the learn more to get more info about how that stuff works.
So for secure boot and device health makes sense. Secure boot and code integrity, it makes sense to put these as required. For BitLocker, you can do it there, but it's not going to change the device into a compliant device without a restart. And that's could impact your environment.
Yeah.
And that's the same with the other two, but both of the other two need a restart either way. Device properties. So this one's pretty straightforward. It's what's the version of the OS that you're running. The interesting one that we've got in there now is valid operating system builds. So this is where you can say, I trust this build, and this build without having to have a maximum and minimum OS version.
Oh, yeah. So then that means that if your users have gone beyond where you want to be, or, like, hey, we've locked to this specific OS,
yes,
and everyone else who's on either side of that OS is in a state that's non-compliant,
yep,
versus you're setting in between, and you've got to manage all the different variations there and stuff.
Well, and for example, if you're setting the minimum OS version, it needs to be the 10.0 number. So what you would 2200 for,
or 22,000.
22,000.
So that's for the base
0.
Windows 11.
But you have to have the .0 at the end. So that's anything that is Windows 11 21 H1, H2, I should say. But then if you set the max OS version to 10.0.2201, the 001, I should say.
001.
.0, that's going to say anything for Windows 11 21 H1 H2 I'm going to trust. It's not going to go beyond that. It's not going to go underneath that.
So I'm just going to pull this up.
Yep.
Just to help us out a little bit.
Correct.
So if we're looking at, the original release was 22,000.
Yep.
And
that's the latest build number.
Yeah.
And that 2538, if you put that as your minimum OS, that means your devices need to be patched up to 10th of October 2024. No, that's wrong. That's incorrect.
Here we go. So this is kind of gives you a better picture of it. So if we scroll back in time, this was the initial release, was .194. Correct. So then the current release, if we want to say, if you're 21H2, this is the October release.
Correct.
Okay. So hopefully this is pretty straightforward.
If you do go down to that 4th octet when setting your compliance policy, understand that you're going to have to update that every month.
Every single month.
And you need to make sure that you have a way to mitigate that. And
and that you time it properly in between cycles and all those good things.
Yeah, there's value in doing that, but also understand that there's limitations associated with it.
Yeah.
So we're not going. Actually, we are going to set that.
Yeah. But we need to know what our current
current
VMs are at before we brick them.
So Adam's just looking at his test device, and to get this up, what you do is you just run winver.
Also, while we're here, the thing that I want to point out, and I think we maybe talked about this when we were talking about servicing and patching. I think a lot of times we get stuck on trying to check the build version or check the actual patch information for devices.
Yes.
If you're looking for security compliance with cumulative updates for Windows, you can simply just check the build versions of the devices in your environment to determine which month of the release they're on, and go back to that page we were just on to see. Sorry, I just realized I'm not actually presenting my
just do winver on the computer that we're doing.
Yeah, you're right. I can do that. Whoa. Winver. All right, there you go. So that's how you get there. Sorry. So I'll switch over to the VM, the test VM in a minute.
So the important thing to note there is the OS build, it's stating 22621.2361.
So let's go check that out.
You need to put the 10.0 in front of that because that's the base OS that's associated. Right.
So in this case, this VM, which is this is not in our tenant, but this VM with the full build is 10.0.22.261. So 22H2, and then the September, or was that August? September release.
Yeah. Perfect.
So
I think
we can say that that's going to be our minimum.
Yep, that's our minimum.
Yep. All right.
And then we're going to leave all of the rest blank.
Yep.
We don't need to set the valid operating system build. We don't worry about that. We're going to go to configuration and manager compliance.
Actually, hold on one moment.
Yes.
We should double check this one because I thought, I could be wrong. I thought that the operating system build was based on whether it's the edition. Am I wrong?
Maybe. I've not looked into that one. This is how.
Hang on. Let me go down let me go down the rabbit hole for a moment here. No. Provide a function. Yeah. Okay. All right. So no, that's not based on.
Yeah.
On addition. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, carry on.
Cool. So we're going to quickly just expand out the configuration manager compliance. So this is where you can use DCM or device compliance manager in config manager and pull that into here. We don't have co-management set up, but if you had co-management set up with the slider slid across for compliance, you would be able to do that for your compliance status. It's actually pretty cool and pretty powerful. This is the one that we're super interested in. Note, require a password to unlock mobile devices. It's a mobile device, as in a Windows phone, not your laptop. So that whole section is irrelevant. Please don't bother setting it. It is what it is, unless you're using holographic.
Yeah, so we'll leave that one alone.
Yep. So the next one we wanted to do is encryption.
Actually, I'm sorry, moment.
Yes.
Is that a new change? Because I know specifically that I've gone down this path. I had a friend who had they were having trouble with their passwords in their tenant. And what was happening was they had a password policy set with using regular policies,
Yes,
Intune policies, but then they also had a compliance policy. And the deal was they had a base compliance policy, and then they had two different password policies depending on the type of accounts that were coming into the environment. So one required a 6-character, one required 8-character. And so the compliance policy was set to require a 6. And what we determined was that compliance policy actually is the enforcement policy.
yes. Oh, that's right. You're right, actually, I'm wrong. For Windows, you have the ability, it does override, I think. There's some really quirky things around the password policy one.
Yeah, so I do believe it does say mobile devices.
Yeah.
But maybe test this one out, because this may have changed since we last looked at it. But I know that specifically,
it can cause issues.
If you set this, it was enforcing a password policy on the device, even with no additional password policies deployed. So this isn't just a read only, we're just monitoring mode thing. It actually was doing enforcement.
It's
so
applying. And then that's part of you shouldn't be doing that in your compliance policy, so please don't use this section.
Yeah.
Encryption, obviously we're going to set to required because it has to be encrypted. We definitely want to make sure the firewall is set to required. TPM is set to required. The next two are really interesting, antivirus and anti-spyware. You would think that that's just going to sit there and say, well, of course it's Microsoft, so it's going to be a Microsoft Defender, right?
Sorry, continue. I've got an idea about the TPM.
So it's not, right? Because of how antiviral and anti-spyware software is set up and designed for Windows now, it has to be linked into the operating system. So we have to be able to check to make sure that the antivirus is there and anti-spyware is there. So it's going to check whatever platform you have that is recognized by the OS. And then we have a separate section for Defender.
Before you go into that one,
yes.
Thought on the TPM.
Yes.
If you are in an environment that has virtual devices,
yes,
you may need to not have this configured for a subset of your devices if they don't have a virtual TPM functionality.
Yes, that's correct.
Or if you are choosing not to enable it. So when we were building out our VMs for this,
I have a good example for this one, Adam.
Well,
because you're not going to be able to share that screen into the UX.
Is it not showing?
No,
it's not.
So what the scenario that we see here typically for the TPM is the Windows 365. Windows 365 by default doesn't have TPM today. So if you have this set to required, you'll never be able to actually authenticate it.
Yeah, same thing with VMware. I know that VMware now has the functionality. It used to not have it. Hyper-V doesn't have it enabled by default. So when you're labbing this out, same deal. There is an option to turn on, if you can turn on Secure Boot and Virtual TPM. That also, in fact, impacts your ability to do Hello for Business, unless you configure your Hello for Business policies to accept a software, or in lieu of a TPM to do software-based security.
Exactly.
So all those things kind of come together in multiple different. It affects your BitLocker functionality, your compliance policies, Hello for Business, all those things are kind of tied to that.
And your ability to install Windows 11 now.
Yeah, there that too. Yes, in fact, when we were building out our VMs, if we had not had that enabled, Windows 11 wouldn't have installed as well. Exactly. So there you go.
Cool. So Defender, we're using Defender. We can go in and make it so it's more. We're saying that it has to be more secure. It all comes down to how far down the rabbit hole you want to go with this one. And then obviously we have Defender for endpoint. And this is where we can go and create, it needs to be below X risk score, which...
That one's a really tough one to chase. So
can be scary.
You need to make sure that you've already gone down this path and you've already worked on your risk score and put in all the right rules and things. And because you'll be chasing this one and you'll lock your devices out for a bit if you aren't careful there.
And make sure you're sitting there and reporting upon it before you sit there and mark them as non-compliant if you're wanting to go down that route. And that's where you don't deploy the compliance policy, but what you do is you centralize and review the status and things like that. But anyway, let's continue on. So here we have the ability to schedule non-compliance after X days. And this is really interesting in that you can actually put in fractions of a day. So you could put in 0.25 and it's going to put a quarter of a day.
So that should get you just through autopilot, get logged into the device, and all the policies should be there and should be good to go.
So if you're wanting it down to simple hours, if you hit the API itself, it is actually based on hours of non-compliance instead of days of non-compliance.
Yeah, and we're not going to go down that path.
No, but what we're going to do here is we're going to set it to 1 day because you should always have a grace period.
Well, so for purposes of our demo, in the lab, we want to leave it at 0.
That's right.
But for in your production environment, at least a minimum of 1 day. The other thing to keep in mind is if you have your devices being built by a third party, you need to potentially make some adjustments for compliance, non-compliance there. Potentially bucketing, having different compliance policies targeted to devices that are in different states. So if it's pre-built by your vendor but not enrolled, it needs to be in one group with one compliance policy targeted versus something that's going to be
it's that autopilot pre-provisioning is going to run into issues because compliance policies will apply from when they land on the device, not when the user signs in.
And then I believe
it doesn't encrypt until the user signs in.
And I don't know that I've attempted this, but I believe that even the device itself, if it's non-compliant, if you've got then conditional access rules enabled, you won't even be able to sign in to complete the provisioning process unless you've got Intune excluded from conditional access, which you should for this.
Depends upon the conditional access policies, but yes, that's correct. Yeah. It gets really sketchy really quickly. The other thing we'll look at, Adam, if we can, is hit the other drop down for actions, and you can now send an email to the end user. And this is where you've got a message template that we were talking about earlier, and you can send out a notification going, "Hey, this is what's done. You've registered a device. What are you doing with it? Blah blah blah." So you can start doing things like that. We're just going to.
Did you create this?
We must have. I think you did.
Because that doesn't seem like the verbiage that Microsoft would have used there.
But you can also go in here and set a group.
Yeah.
I don't know why we can't find it, but
we don't have any recipients in the list. But you could potentially send this to a Teams mailbox or things like that as well.
Or their manager.
And then we want to add it to the retired list immediately. So that'll trigger that other list that we were looking at.
That's correct.
So we'll try that.
Again, be very cautious when you add a device to a retire list. Please don't do it with this demo, Adam, because that's going to mean that we can't unretire it. It gets really messy really quickly.
I think it was going to let us decide to retire. We haven't configured that policy.
Yeah, change that to at least 1 day for me.
Okay, fine. I want to try it out.
I know you want to try it out.
Do it live, Steve.
I hear.
All right.
So we're doing the wrong thing. We're sitting here, all devices in your environment, test it, validate it, make sure it matches what you need, and we're going to go and create the profile.
And then keep in mind, you can also do policies with filters. We haven't gone into filters, but you could just keep that in mind. There is the ability to do some filter stuff.
And you can target it to users as well, although that then means that if they sign into a second computer that's somebody else's, that compliance policy applies as well as the standard user's profile.
Yeah. All right. So, and that's actually a good point, because you can identify your high risk users. You can say, hey, you can have dynamic user groups based on region and whatever. And so you could say if this user is logging into any device, their compliance needs to be higher because they've got access to different levels of resources, those sorts of things. So good things to know. Now, Steve, we haven't actually previously discussed this, but we did mention we kind of want to do all of the here's how you create policies. We're going to go ahead and just sort of go through all of those now. And then the follow-on videos will be assessing compliance against all of the different OSs that we're going to.
So we're going to now, we'll go bottom up. So we're going to hit select Mac OS now.
Okay.
And we're going to give this a nice, pretty name of Mac OS. So it's a lowercase m for Mac OS, but that's okay.
I wasn't sure. It was, crapshoot there.
Yes, it is. So here's where we're sitting there and saying you must have system integrity protection enabled, which is important. Again, minimum, maximum OS versions. That's a pretty awesome one, but you've got to maintain it. And then system security. So you want to make sure you have a password to unlock the device. You want to block simple passwords. And there's various other scenarios you want to match in here. But for the most part, leave it as default. We definitely want to make sure the device is encrypted. We definitely want the firewall on. We want to block incoming connections. Stealth mode can get sketchy. And this is where you can sit there and go, we are going to only allow apps from the Mac App Store or identified developers. And what that means is unless you've explicitly identified the developer as a trusted publisher, the user or the device will go into a non-compliant state, which is pretty cool. But we're not going to set that, Adam. We're going to.
Oh, okay. I'm not going to set that.
No, we're going to set that to not configured because I haven't validated all of our stuff. Again, here you get some cool stuff. You get the message. But then also there's an additional item in the drop-down, Adam. That one there, remotely lock the non-compliant device. And you can say after a day, it's locked. And that's it.
Now, because we don't have these devices right now,
yes,
let's not actually deploy these policies until because we're going to remotely not lock your Mac for non-compliance.
That's okay. It's not built.
It's not yet. Okay.
Yeah. So you can go and actually set that.
Okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
All right. Now, also keep in mind, because of the scope of the policy, this is a Mac OS type.
Correct.
When you do all devices, it's still filtering at a top level to Mac OS devices.
Correct.
Hopefully that's intuitive, just pointing that out.
You may see this policy exist in other hardware types, but it will say not applicable. So don't stress about it. It's by design, and that's where you can sit there and do all devices without any concerns. Linux, let's skip that for a second because it's a little bit more complicated and convoluted. We're going to select iPad and iOS. So these are actually two separate operating systems. Believe it or not, though they look exactly the same.
I'm going to match the platform that's listed there like that.
You should, Adam.
Like I care. We're not even doing emojis at this point.
We know. I'm very disappointed. Ben would be very disappointed.
We'll do it on the Linux one.
Exactly. So this is where you can go in and specify, well, we don't want the ability to set up mail on the device. So it has to be managed. There's all sorts of problems there if we turn that on. So if we go then to device health, we want to block jailbroken devices. Not really prevalent as much anymore, but this is something that you should be doing anyway. And then we're going to go under required the device to be below a certain threat level. That's much the same as what we saw with Defender. Again, be cautious setting that up. It shouldn't be an issue, but also be cautious setting that up.
So then it still has to be connected to some sort of threat defense service. It looks like. Okay.
And that's the Apple Threat Defense by default.
Okay.
And that's just their standard default.
Now, okay, so let's stop for a moment here. So
Yes.
we're saying block jailbroken devices.
Yes.
Is this going to, because we don't have corresponding compliant or conditional access tied to these things yet.
Correct.
So it's not like it's just requiring, not requiring. It's saying block. So is this compliance policy also the conditional access policy, or what is this?
So I don't believe so, but I've not tested that functionality. I haven't jailbroken a device in a long time.
Okay. Well, we'll find out.
Yes, we will. So if we go properties again,
actually won't find out because we won't jailbreak anything.
No. And you'll see here you've got the OS versions. We can specify that. Great, cool. Defender again, do with caution, much the same as the device health. And then the system security. This is where you can sit there and put some controls around enrollment types as well. So you should always require a PIN or a password.
Interestingly, based on the way this looks, I think this is even if you were to go into the actual policy, I think they've just injected the same template for the passwords into here that you would normally have in your regular policy.
Yep. So we're going to block simple password. So 1234 will be blocked. And not allow you to use that.
Okay. So ideally, you kind of, as we stated, if this is going to be the thing that sets the policies, you don't want to also then go create a password policy.
Correct.
So you would set this the way you would set your password policy, and this becomes that.
Yep. And then the last one's actually a pretty interesting one there, Adam. The restricted apps. So if you take off the info bubble, so the device security restricted apps, this is where you can explicitly say these apps shouldn't be on the device.
Yeah. So if we wanted to block TikTok or whatever,
yes,
certainly could.
Exactly.
All right. So that's all the settings that are available there.
That's it. And if we drop down, hey, we've got an extra one.
All right. Let's send our email to the user.
Definitely have to send the email to the user.
Okay.
And then we can go do a push
Send
notification.
Push notification. All right.
Which is pretty cool.
Lock.
Yep. We're going to set that to 1 day just to be nice. And we're not going to do the retire because we don't know enough about it. Again, we're doing all devices. You should probably limit this to wherever you need it to go. And we're going to hit create.
Actually, sorry, let's back up. So for iOS, you can have personal device enrollment and things like that. Yep. If we do all devices versus, or I guess the differentiator here is MDM versus MAM.
Correct.
So the devices have to be MDM managed in order for the compliance policies to work.
That's
everything else. If you're trying to do personal device, personally owned, not managed, and you want to manage the apps, that's where MAM comes in. We'll get into that later.
Yep.
But you would then be able to set requirements in your MAM policies to prevent access.
Exactly.
Okay, so there's that one.
Cool. So we have all those ones created, and then we get into the interesting Android ones. So we have 3 different options here. Device administrator shouldn't be really used anymore.
Because that's deprecated going away, right?
Yes, it is, but there's certain edge cases that it still exists for.
Yeah,
that's okay.
So I think we've got some like Teams phones or something that are that. Yeah.
It's typically meeting room controllers or purpose-built systems. So we're typically going to use that Android Enterprise. So we're going to select that one there. And you'll see that there's 2 options here, which is fully managed, dedicated, corporate-owned, or personally owned work profile. So
which one did we use for Android?
We use the top one.
Top one, okay.
We recommend using the personally owned work profile, but we'll use this one.
So essentially, whichever one you're using,
you
would want to set up the compliance policy for each.
Yeah. And you'll find out really quickly if you've set it the wrong way, because you've set the non-compliant for if you don't have a compliance policy. and those people will not have access to resources. And that's it. So this is the fully managed. It's going to give you more controls. You can sit there and go, you must have Defender on there. Even if you sit there and say, hi, it will force it on. Yep. Health. Under a certain health level. Yep, cool. Same, it's just sitting there and saying it must be a level of integrity and checked from the Play Store for all of apps. OS version again, cool. And then system security, where you have to have a password or a PIN to unlock it, and don't go and change it from numeric to alphanumeric. But what I would do is...
You said don't change it?
No. You want to leave it so it's a numeric. If you have it as alphanumeric, people will use their password.
Yeah.
And then ideally, you should have a maximum minutes before an activity. A lot less than that, but that's okay. Encryption should be on, and it is on by default for most Android devices. Device security, again, you want to make sure that the app runtime isn't working. Let's see. We're getting the same scenarios that we had with the iOS and Android. iOS and iPad, where we can send push notifications and we can send remote locks after a day. And they work really well. You get that all notifications to all devices. Then the next step we're going to add is we're going to add that personal device. So enterprise, personally owned work profile. Let's have a quick look at the difference here. You need to select it.
I know.
Cool. We're going to go next, and it should have a little bit less controls in there from memory. So you can block a rooted device on a work profile, but on a fully managed device, you don't have the ability to have a rooted device. And that's a big differentiator. And then you can start sitting here and putting those same controls in there. Although we've added in Play Service must be configured and up-to-date security provider. For Play Connect, device properties, it's going to be the same OS versions. System security is going to be mostly the same, but we have additional securities associated around blocking USB debugging and putting patch levels in there and requiring password to unlock mobile devices.
So in all of these cases, for all the things we're doing, consider, go through this with your security team, come to an agreement on this is what we want, and then test. Make sure that the experience is what you want.
Don't just turn it on. Please don't turn it on.
Yeah.
Turn it on. Sorry. Please don't just turn it on. Make sure you test and validate. It's going to make your life easier. So there's a change between Android 11 and Android 12, and this is where they're calling that out around password complexity compared to required password, which is pretty cool. And that's it. And you get that same push notification and email option to say that it's enrolled. We go next, then we go, yep, and we go create. Awesome. And then we're going to step into the ASOP, AOSP, and we're going to do Android AOSP, not AEOSP.
It's like Aesop's Fables.
Okay.
It was intentional.
Yes, okay. Compliance, but that's okay. You'll note that we have a lot less options here, and you see that there's no Defender option. And the security is very simple. We're sitting there and saying it must be encrypted and must have a password. As you'll note, that it doesn't appear to be as prolific as the previous policy and configuration. So we're going to go next. Again, we can only have two options here, or three, where we're going to send the email, because the emails are awesome. Everybody reads them.
Better.
Yep. And then we're going to target all devices, and we're going to hit next, and we're going to create that. Super straightforward. And then the last one is the device administrator of the Androids, I should say. And this one here will be even less populated than you will see on the others, I believe. Yep, so we set our Defender version, happy days. And you can say, well, yeah, if it's not managed with device administrator, lock it. There you go. So,
this is actually telling them, hey,
Yep.
if you're, so this would be if we were explicitly trying to kill off
Yep.
device administrator, we would block devices managed by device administrator.
Yep.
It's
pretty cool.
Yeah.
Obviously block rooted, and then you can step through all of the other scenarios that we're seeing in the other ones.
All the same things.
Yep.
Now you see why we put it all in one video.
Yeah. But you'll also note that you have the ability to set restricted apps there,
Mm-hmm.
which is pretty cool. And then you can go in there and you'll see that it's only talking about Android 10 and later, and 9 and earlier, or Samsung Knox, because they had some additional controls in the Samsung Knox in that generation. Cool. We're probably never going to provision a device in this space, but let's go and put it all in anyway for completion of content.
Did that wrong. Doesn't matter.
Cool. We're going to hit next, and we're going to all devices, and we're going to create. Perfect. So the last one, and the one that we skipped, is Linux, and we're going to grab that. And you'll note that it when it came up as a settings catalog compliance. So much.
You're welcome,
for
Ben.
Emojis. We're going to
That's for Ben.
True, that's fair. And we can sit there and we can actually specify this. And you'll note that this looks like settings catalog because it is settings catalog. We go in here and we're going to say, well, these are the allowed distros, and you sit there and specify that.
So I'm going to go ahead and just add each one to
Yep.
the space, and then we'll go back through and clear them out if we don't like them.
Exactly.
This is what I do anytime there's new policies in Intune. I just go through settings catalog, tick them all on, and then come here and check them out. And then
Makes
you can
sense.
just remove individuals, remove categories as needed.
Yep.
All right.
So what we'll do right back to the top, scroll up. So the first one is that distros. This is where you sit there and you can set your minimum, maximum version of Ubuntu.
Now remember,
And
we
that
talked
makes-
about the fact that Ubuntu is the only supported Linux distro when we were building out the Linux, doing the Linux provisioning. And so here it is again, because remember we talked about the point of Linux the current functionality that exists in Intune for Linux is directly related to compliance. And here it is. This is what you're seeing.
Exactly.
It only can assess compliance on an Ubuntu OS. So there you go.
Exactly. So what we'll do, Adam, is we'll remove that one because otherwise we need to specify a version number, and I can't remember the version numbers. The custom compliance is really cool, but we haven't set any of that up, and we're not going to because we'll do that in a separate video.
Okay. But just as a reminder, if you skip to this part, this is where we would where you would go do that, and you can get the sample scripts from this GitHub repo.
Exactly.
It's even cool with the ASCII art.
Exactly.
Deal. All right. So we're gonna remove that guy for
Yep.
now.
And we're not saying we're not using it. It's just we want to make sure that we get through everything today. We've got device encryption where we're doing, well, it has to be encrypted, of course. The next one's interesting with the password policy. We can sit there and say there must be a minimum number of uppercase, symbols, lowercase. It must be a set length, and it must be a set number of digits as well. So you could sit there and set it to 4 for maximum minimum digits, and then you could do 1, 2, 3, 4, and you'd meet that. So it's an interesting password policy, but that's how it's set up. So,
it's all we've got at this point.
That's
So, I would definitely expect more in the future on this.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, if you're really looking at it, the idea here is even if they didn't have any specific things to assess compliance on, I think the main thing is that because we can enroll a device into Intune, in a Linux device, that now means that we can apply conditional access policies to it.
Exactly.
Whether or not it's even based on the compliance state, probably, I think.
Yes.
So just simply being able to enroll it in Intune is first step. Now, I would expect that we'd see this expand out over time.
Exactly. So
but if you want to see it expand, go use it.
Yes.
Let Microsoft know that you need it, that you are using it. And that's how they're going to know, is if you're going out and creating this stuff.
Exactly. But also you can do it as a custom script too.
That's true. Yeah.
Yep.
So anything they don't have baked in, if you can write it in a script, you can also grab extra compliance there too.
And in this scenario, you can only send an email. So we'll go next, and we're going to sit there and target all users. All devices. And we're going to go next, and cool. And we're going to hit create policies again for me there, Adam. Because one thing that I want to call out here is you'll note that there's not a option for Chrome OS, even though Chrome OS can be provisioned. The reason for that is Google has its own compliance engine that is then surfaced into the Intune portal for conditional access purposes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And there's also the Windows 8.1 and later. Don't use that.
I think it's the same, probably.
Maybe.
It probably, and you could probably set this to, let's just go down the path for a moment. Let's see what it shows.
No, it's so limited.
It's very limited. Yeah. So nope. All right.
So don't use that.
Yeah. All right. So that's the base. So we will kind of hopefully put a marker here.
Yep.
And then from this point throughout the remainder of the videos, we should have a corresponding video or segment related to compliance for the particular OS that you're interested in.
Exactly.
Well, within reason. And we're not going to go into the AOSP or the device admin. Maybe go into personal. Okay. So we'll get into all of those in a moment.
Cool.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Intune.training, the place to learn how to use Microsoft Intune, the Steve and Adam show with Adam and Steve. What's up, buddy?
Hello, Adam. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Happy 2024.
Indeed. It's 2024. It's amazing. Like
your beard went away, your hair went away.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Yeah, it has. It has. Wow. It's the annual haircut.
The annual. It's good. I like it.
Yeah. Got to be predictable.
Yeah. I mean, get it. It's good.
Yeah.
It's fun. All right. Well, people don't care.
Did you get some good Christmas presents from Santa?
No. Which is exactly what I asked for from Santa.
Yeah.
I said, nah, I don't want anything. I'm good.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
It's nice.
Understand completely.
But I'll tell you, my wife and I celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary.
20 years, dude. Wow.
20 years.
That's impressive.
So that was nice.
One more, and I'll be able to vote.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, nice.
Or drink.
And if you want to send us anniversary presents, just feel free to message us on Twitter or in our comments. Happy to. Whatever. Anyway.
Yep.
Okay. So let's get to it, Steve. All right. So you are probably watching this video after you've watched the other video that we recorded at the end of last year for compliance policies in Intune.
Yes.
So Steve
That's
was
what I'm doing
in town
right
visiting. We actually recorded that video back in early November, I think.
Touch at him.
And he was sitting right next to me. It was great. It's not working anymore. There it is. So anyway, we started recording that video, and we ran out of time. So we didn't have all the devices. Steve strangely didn't bring 800 devices to Houston with him. I don't know why.
Thankfully,
but he did buy a whole brand new MacBook while I was here. That was fun.
I love my Mac. It is brilliant.
Yeah. My children were with me, and
We had some adventures.
my little girl got very, very sick and threw up all in the back seat. So that was fun. Anyway, all right, we'll get there. All right.
We will.
We had a good time.
We're just excited.
Yes, we are. Just look at the timestamps. Fast forward to where you want to be. If you want to hear this is great because we're just catching up. This is for us. So we started doing compliance stuff. We went through and we set up all of the different compliance policy types in Intune, and this should be video 2. We're going to release them together, and then you'll watch that one and watch this one. So if you're watching this one first, go back and watch the other one. If you want to see us setting up the policies,
we'll just giggle.
So now we've got all of the devices or samples of the devices. So I've got the Linux and Windows devices, and Steve should have a Mac and an Android and maybe have an iOS device if he can get it back up and running before we get there. So if he's staring down most of the time, it's because he's trying to get his iPhone up. So we're going to just jump right in, and so I'm going to open up the Intune console, and we're going to show the current configurations. Here we go.
Cool.
So if you're in intune.microsoft.com, you're going to go to devices, and just as a reminder, we are using the devices preview node. It's sometime in the future. This won't be preview. This will just be default, but that is what we're using. So then we're going to go down to manage devices and go to compliance. And by the way, the reporting used to be in a node under devices called monitor, and now all the reporting is kind of underneath each of the relevant nodes. So if you're looking for your compliance reports, here they are. And so then what we're going to do is just jump right in on our policies. So this is all of the different compliance policies that we've got configured. Steve, do you remember, did we do anything on the compliance settings over here?
Yes, we marked it, so we actually turned that off. No,
Okay.
we left that as default. Marked non-compliant devices. Marked devices with no compliance policy as non-compliant. We definitely reinforce this one, and I'm going to reinforce it again right now. Leave this as the default where you mark your device as non-compliant. Please don't just say, oh yeah, we'll just set that to auto-compliant.
Yeah.
You should always have this as marked as non-compliant if there's no compliance policy assigned. This is really important when we start looking at things like conditional access and secure authentication.
There we go. So we're just going to jump right in, and we're going to look at our Windows policy. So our Windows policy should be deployed to all devices. So it should be hitting all of our Windows devices. And we are requiring all of the security features, and we should already be deployed and applied to our test device. So I'm going to switch the sharing.
Switch screen. Yay.
It doesn't let us share multiples and then just toggle between them. We have to unshare. Share.
Or you use a third-party app that does it all in the back end for you.
Yeah. Well,
that's more advanced for Adam.
It is.
So what we're doing in here, obviously, is we're going in and we're going to be looking at the device compliance state in the company portal. The reason why we're going in here and we're looking at it at this point is we haven't set up any conditional access at the moment, which is super important, and it is one of our future videos, but conditional access is what's going to consume the device compliance state here.
Yep. So just a note, while you're here in Company Portal, you can actually click on devices, and it'll show you all of the devices that are assigned to you as the user. So your users would have the same experience. And so when you come into the Company Portal, you may get this exclamation up here. And it may be related to this device or related to one of the other devices that a user is assigned to. So this is a great way for a user education opportunity to tell a user, hey, especially once you start setting up conditional access, you may want to have a KB internally or something that says, hey, if you've got, if you get this message, here's, or if you're getting a message from conditional access, this is how you can go and check, and it'll, this will tell you what's wrong, potentially,
and how to
those
fix it, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So, so if we were in a state where we weren't able to access because we didn't have, we were non-compliant. There we go. You could click check access, and it would check in and reevaluate all your compliance information there.
And the thing to note here is where we're sitting there and saying you have access to company resources. If you don't have anything consuming your device compliant state, it can be compliant or non-compliant. You still have access to corporate resources. Do we recommend that state? No. Please go and set up conditional access to consume this resource because it's super important. It's there for a reason.
Yep, that's it. So that's, I mean, this is, pretty straightforward. So I'm going to, we don't have a device that's non-compliant at this point. We will see what we've got.
I do.
Really, hey, all right, good.
Not a Windows device, but.
So I'm going to switch back to the host machine. Sorry, too many windows.
But what we can do once Adam brings up his company up his Intune portal is we'll see in here we have the ability to go and select our devices, and from there we'll be able to see the device compliance state. So you'll see here under Windows, if we filter just to the Windows devices, but that's okay, it doesn't really matter. We can see here Adam has a compliant device. This is the one we were just working on. If we then go to device compliance on the left-hand side, we will see how that device device is compliant by selecting the Windows compliance policy. And it won't give you anything more because it's compliant. If it's non-compliant, if we go back to all devices for a minute, Adam, and we select a non-compliant device, and then we go to device compliance, what we should see in here is an error and non-compliant. And there's no click-through.
Nope, it's neat. I think you get it from the drill through on
the
here
compliance.
On the report.
Okay, so previously you were able to click through and see that.
Yeah, and it would tell you specifically which thing was non-compliant, which setting was non-compliant. Neat. So that takes us right back to the same place. I agree. I thought there was a drill through that would tell you.
Yeah, there was.
Which thing was missing.
Yep. So.
Nothing useful on those columns.
Yep. Previously, yeah, there was definitely.
Okay, let's see.
You had the ability to see the report. Non-compliant policies, maybe.
What if we drill through this way? There we go. So these are the ones with errors. It's still taking us right back to the same device. Well, doggone it. Huh.
If we go to the policy.
How about setting compliance individually?
Yeah, that'll
be it. This is what I do at work too. There we go. So you can at least see, which thing is non-compliant. Well, that's not nearly as nice as it was before. So let's see, compliant, non-compliant. So if we scroll down to non-compliant for Windows.
But it doesn't tell us which policy it's assigned to.
Yeah, there we go. So we've got minimum OS. Yeah, so it's just telling you.
So if you go back to device compliance and go to the actual compliance policies, and then if we go to the Windows compliance.
Per setting status.
Per setting status. That's where you want to be.
Okay, so then, sorry, it took us several clicks, but this is just like it is in real life.
Yep.
There we go. So we can see that one of our devices has a minimum OS version problem, and then several of them have errors. So the encryption is not happening.
Yeah. And let's be open and honest, the encryption isn't happening more than likely because we don't have TPM enabled on the device.
Probably
Hyper-V.
Yeah, but I always turn that on.
Yeah, I do too.
But also the boxes have been off since we built them and all sorts of things. So who knows?
And we might not actually have an encryption policy assigned to all devices.
So now we've done a full tour all the way through all of the different ways you can look at the compliance on the compliance reports. As is our style, we just don't prep very much before things. So
well, we were, and we were very much
Really-
on the track, but there's been a UX change since we looked at it.
Okay, so that's the Windows one. So
and the part that I want to stress on that is there is going to be UX changes and experience changes, but the reason with compliance policies, especially for us, we're not going in here every day and looking at this. You'll probably see it more often than we will, but we're the setters now, not the admins. If that makes sense.
Doesn't. No way.
Okay.
Oh, you mean we are doing the build out, configuration, etc. But then we're doing the set it and forget it. It's someone else's
That's
job
correct.
to go look at it. Is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, that's fair.
Yes. So what are we doing next, Adam?
Okay, so I've got a Linux box.
Ooh,
So
Linux.
let's try this one. Ubuntu. There we go.
Ooh.
Super secret password.
My
Okay.
password is 123.
Pretty close. So if you followed our Linux provisioning video, you would have seen the way you provision Linux is to simply just install the Intune extension in the Intune app for Linux on the box. And so we've got that. And at this point, I'm just going to sign in. I think we did go through this again, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. It's strange that it's asking me to fully sign in again.
It could be that it's just the token's expired because we haven't used it in so long and we've set it to auto expire, which is probably going to be the case.
Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to register the device. Maybe. Eventually. Getting there. Oh, there it goes. Now it's checking its compliance.
Perfect.
All right. So, not compliant. Why is it not compliant? Let's go.
And you'll note there that saying that this device doesn't meet your organizational security requirements. You might not have access to organizational resources such as email from this device. Because we don't have conditional access set up right now, we still do. But if we were to set up conditional access, we wouldn't have access.
Sync your device with Intune. Okay. So we're going to hit back. And we're going to, don't want to remove it. Let's see, we're in, saying go sync it in the company portal. Is this not the company portal?
Yes. But what it could be is we've been very aggressive with our policies. Let's have a quick look. I'm just having a look on the back end. No, it hasn't picked up policy yet. And that's kind of the issue. Let's jump across while we're waiting for that, Adam. And I can...
Well, actually, before we do that, I guess the good thing here is that we do want to have a device that is not working that we can demonstrate on. So this is great. So this is kind of what we want. We want to see what's the experience like whenever a user can't access company resources. How would they go and resolve it? And so ideally, this is largely user driven. So should give the user some instructions on how to take care of the issue. But obviously, you could create some sort of user instruction related to this as well if needed. But
Definitely.
that's pretty much it. Okay, so Steve, you got another one?
I do. If we go across and we're going to actually, what I'm going to do, we'll start here and then I'll get you on the back end, Adam, to add in the Intune portal. But what you'll see here is it's saying unable to, I decided to go and check while I'm doing that. What it's trying to do is register this phone. And you'll see that this is the phone that I'm currently using and it's confirming device settings. It's going and it's corporate owned, so it's an Apple Business Manager registered device, but it's saying you can't sign in to company portal because the device isn't compliant. And you'll see here you need to update settings for this to work. So initial error message that I got, let's see if I can get it to reload, was a little bit, I won't say confusing, but not what I was expecting to see. And this will just load up in a second. And it's going to go and make a liar of me. But you'll go here and we go, here. So unable to set up email on device. How do I resolve this? Like, I look at that from a non-IT person. It's like, oh, that's a problem. So because the device isn't compliant, it's not allowing any of the config to land on the device. Cool. So if we then drill into that device, you'll see that we need to update some settings. How to resolve, and it comes back to this loop. It goes, oh, you need to disassociate and disconnect and do all this stuff. But that's not right. So what I want you to do, what we're going to do is we're just going to quickly switch over to Adam's screen. And if he brings up the Intune portal for me.
Oh, boy.
I was going to get you to do it on the Linux, but that's okay.
Caught me off guard.
Go.
Which one is
right. So if we go back to devices and we go to iOS on the left-hand side, or even, doesn't really matter where. The reason why this phone, that's exactly the phone we're working on with the iPhone and then the serial number because it still hasn't completed its full registration. It's non-compliant. If we go to device compliance, can we click into that or do we need to go the other way because it's magical at the moment? Yeah, we need to go the other way. What we're going to find is we have in our compliance policy, under policies, we have set up no simple passwords. And we've set immediately mark device as non-compliant. So rather than telling the user that you need to change your password from a simple password, which it might well be, no, that's just saying no. So what we would say in this scenario is if we scroll down a little bit for me, Adam, see here where we say actions for non-compliance, mark device non-compliant immediately. This is a really bad experience for your end user. This is the first time they're using that device on your corporate network and they're not able to do anything. And it's a really random message. The better experience is to sit there and say, mark the device non-compliant within a day. And it gives you the ability to see the grace period and track, hey, yeah, you need to get this device into compliance, go do this, this, and this, and you're happy days. So just wanted to call that out because it's super, super, super important. And that's why I'm unable to register my device at the moment, is because there's no grace period. And that's the same with any OS.
You're right there, brother.
I'm good. We'll just leave the iOS out of future video. So that's why we aren't able to register that device, which is actually cool, but it's also one of these things where it's like, hang on, we just need to make sure that you're aware of that and you mitigate and control that in when you're setting up that policy. Cool. So, shall we jump onto another OS there, Adam?
You've got them. What do you got?
I've got a Mac.
Let's go there.
All right, let's go to the Mac. What do we got on the Mac? Let's go and look at the
My
compliance
Ubuntu
policy
is
there.
still non-compliant.
And we're not going to look at the Mac policy while we're there, but that's okay. So
No, you can do it. You can do it.
All right.
Sure.
All right. So I'm going to duck
We
over.
want to do them all the same way. We start on the box, and then we go back and look at the policy.
All right.
Look,
Let's do that.
because if we change it midstream, people are going to know that we realized it was a better way to do it, and we just want to be consistent.
True. So what you'll see here, is this device is marked as non-compliant. But you'll also note, and this comes back to the conversation Adam was highlighting, is we have the ability to go in here and see all of the other devices. So this is the phone we just registered here, and we can see that for whatever reason, it's just gone, no, you don't have access to corporate resources because it doesn't meet the requirements. Okay, we're good with that. Same here, if we go to the Mac, it's saying you don't have the permissions. So we're just going to quickly go over and open up Edge, and we're going to go to aka.ms/in, or the Intune portal. In the Intune portal, we're now going to load this up. It should actually allow us in because we don't have conditional access in place for that endpoint. If we did, we'd get a, no, you're not welcome here. Please go away and get your device healthy and compliant. So now if we go here to devices, and we go to our Mac OS device, we have one in our environment because we're awesome. And we're going to select compliance policies because we want to see actually what the policy is. We're going to click in on that, and we're going to go and have a look at the policy itself. So
Device
this will
encryption.
load up. It will definitely be, maybe. So what we're saying,
I've cheated. I've already looked.
yeah, okay. And cool. So you'll see here that there is a requirement for device encryption. We have to have a password to unlock it. Needs the firewall enabled and incoming connections blocked. And obviously, system integrity protection. Awesome. So the reason why we're not able to do this is we don't have file vault enabled on the device. And there's two primary ways to fix this. You as the admin, if you're sitting there and expecting your end users to have that level of encryption, you should be sending out a policy, and we'll talk about that in a future video, to encrypt that device. Or if I'm an end user and I know that it's going to be file encryption, I can go down here and I can go to settings, and I can just go file vault. Now I can just turn it on. And I put in my magical password. That is incorrect. I do like that it just... and I can then sit there and go, yeah, create it. Don't put it to my iCloud account. I don't care. And it will go and set up my encryption. And you'll note that I didn't even note down the encryption key. Scary, right? If you leave the encryption component to your end user to encrypt, you as an IT admin don't have the ability to get their file vault key. If you as the admin handle that, then you have the ability to track it. So now we should be able to go back over here to the company portal. I should be able to go check status, and I'll go, all right, well, let me go and check for you. And I'll probably go no because you need to restart the computer. That's okay. But this is where, when you're sitting there and creating these policies, make sure you have a functionality and a control for your end users to be able to get compliant. And also, if it's a complicated process or if it's a process that you want to track, it will allow you to track it. So my Mac just restarted. So obviously it's now sitting there and going, hey, you're compliant. And we're going to apply some policies and configurations that we haven't previously applied. Oh, okay. I think we may have just got a wipe sent to the device, and I don't know what the password is.
Whoops.
Oh, hang on. I know where it is. So yeah, my device is now in a situation where it's not working properly. Hey, 2 for 2.
Just breaking them all the way, huh?
Yep.
Well,
So
my Linux box is apparently it just went offline and.
I know what happened here. So what happened here is we marked, if the device was marked as non-compliant, we're sent a remote wipe automatically. So my device.
We would have remembered that if we were.
No, we probably wouldn't have. Or a remote lock. So now you'll see that it's now unlocked. Because what happened is the device got locked because of the policy that we had set with device compliance. So this is just signing in, and it's going to take a little bit of going through that process. It's not arduous. It's just the first time as this scenario. So if we go in here, we go back to our company portal, what we should see, if we can get a hold of the services and processes running, we'll just minimize that. If we go in here, let's just quickly show you what actually happened there and why we had a remote lock. Is remotely lock the device for non-compliant devices. 1 day schedule. It's been more than 1 day that it's been non-compliant. So that's why we got locked. And now look, we're in compliance. Magic. So if we go back here, we can, but what that means is if you set that setting, make sure that your support staff are aware of where that setting is. Because what I had to do is if I went to Mac OS and then I went and selected this device in here in the job history, you'll see that I have a remote lock completed and this is the pin. I only know that that's the pin because I've done it before and it's fun. But that pin, if you don't know it, basically you've bricked the device and you've got to restart the whole thing and reinstall it, and it gets fun. Thank you, Apple.
Nice.
So, yeah. Word of caution, be very, 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 very careful when setting that policy because it will catch you out. It will catch your admins out, and then they will have to try and go in there and go, I don't know what I'm doing. And then say, okay, that's new and it's a good learning experience. Yes. So, yeah. But also, again, have a grace period to allow the device to get compliant. This is the same with anything. You should always have a grace period. You can put controls around that in certain scenarios. But yeah, use a grace period, please, please. And I'm sure I said it to Adam at the time and he went, yeah, it's fine. Cool. So that is our Android devices, Apple Mac devices even. Caught me. Let's go talk about Android. So I'll flick over to our Android device and you'll see that we've got this nice canvas that we're working on. And I'm just going to quickly go in here and I've already registered the device because I was easily entertained.
By the way, I'm looking through our email because we set our policies to
send
us an email.
Yes.
I don't see any of them. I see emails for new device registrations.
Yeah. But I think we may have sent it to the manager or something if we didn't set it to them.
Maybe so.
Something like that. Yeah. So what you'll see here is we have a nice little Surface Duo. And if we go in here, you can now see that I have my Android device. It's all registered. And we actually have it already compliant because we had very simple workflows associated with this. I'm pretty sure this is a, let's have a look. Actually, let's do the easy way. We're just going to go back to the Mac and we're going to have a quick look at the devices. We're going to go to Android, then we're going to select Android. In here, you'll see that it is a Android fully managed device. What does that mean is we fully own that device and we're doing everything around it. From a compliance point of view, we have kept it super simple. If we go down here to compliance, policies, and we go and look at fully managed compliance. If we go here, we can see we have one device that is compliant, and we go in here and you'll see that we need to have a whole heap of things associated with the password. Has to be at least numeric. We only want it to be numeric. Don't force your users to have alphanumeric passwords because they're going to use the same password they use to sign into their computer. Simple, right?
And that won't be confusing at all.
Yeah, and it's the same as when you're setting up Windows Hello for Business, PIN only. So PIN is a personal identifiable number. Again, same thing. We're also sitting there and we're saying we need to have it encrypted. The app runtime integrity needs to be happy days, and it requires a password to unlock the device. Yes, and the maximum minutes of inactivity before password is required is 15. I think right now I have that at 30, so I'm surprised this is actually doing that. Or it might be 10. Actually, I think it's 10 because Surface, the maximum you can do is 10. Because when we're doing demos, it's a lot easier not to have to worry about that. But what you'll also see is we have the ability to send an email to the end user, send a push notification to the end user, remotely lock the device, which will do the same as the Mac if we do bad things. And then we also mark the device for non-compliance. So this is where technically we should never actually hit the remotely lock the non-compliant device, but that's where it's at. Cool. So do you have any questions there, Adam?
No, I mean, the only question I've got is why does Intune, the Intune agent, keep crashing on this Linux box? I swear we've not been able to successfully, reliably do a demo on the Linux boxes at all.
Yep.
So for what it's worth, I spun up my other Windows VMs, and I found that they were complaining about disk encryption.
Yes.
And when I logged into them, we got a nice toast notification that, oh, you need to encrypt your drive. And
yes.
When I tried to encrypt the drive, it told me that it couldn't because I had
already encrypted.
a CD. No, because I had the CD still in the drive. So the virtual CD from when we built it.
Yes.
So I popped those out, rebooted, and
away
it started doing device encryption. So
yep. And this is somewhat of a known issue with Hyper-V and VMs.
Well, I think it's just in general, it's kind of a silly thing to say I can't encrypt because you've got a CD in your drive.
It's a data drive.
Yeah, it's just weird.
Just hope you don't have a CD or DVD burner in there that will then go and encrypt your DVD that's read-writable.
Yeah, maybe.
Because that would be entertaining to watch, because every time you made a change, you'd have to write it and then it would re-encrypt it and burn through all of your read-write counts.
But also, I mean, that's kind of why we also have conditional access, so that when
Correct.
things like that are required aren't working, hey, we need to address that. How do we address that? We've got to go.
Yep.
And the user needs to go take action.
Exactly.
So I don't know. Hopefully people got at least something out of these, even though our demos. I think we're back to year one on the demo mode on these, but
bit, yes.
I think the main thing. Actually, let me do this before I do that. I'm gonna go back to this guy. Let's see, which one am I going to do? That one, number 2. Here we go.
Yes.
So as you can see, this just gives you an idea on the Windows device what we've got here. So each of these things, it's telling me we've got issues. So I need to do encryption. Plus, I need to get my address updated.
You need to sync.
Yeah.
And it's been more than 7 days. Yep. And automatic remediation failed as well. So all of that can be, it's got actionable items there, which is super useful.
Yeah. And I think this is great because if you've got conditional access tied in, and you've got a deal here where you've got a grace period, and so somebody's got a device that's sitting in a drawer, or they've been out of office or whatever, they get back online, it's going to force them to take actions to secure their device, to bring it up to standard before they're allowed to do anything that would require conditional access to get in. And I think that's really the best part here, because up until something like this, we've not been able to really prevent users from getting from using old computers, I guess, really. Not a reliable way. But I think it's the user self-service piece that I really like about this, where, hey, look, you can fix this probably if you follow these steps. You can get back to things, but until you do, we're not going to allow you to do anything else. So I like that.
It's basically what you see around the network access control and everything associated on that. It's where you want to have the ability for that device to get compliant before you go and do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to add an additional one here, Adam, that is something that I don't think a lot of people think about, deal with, because they're relatively unique in how they are used, is the Chrome OS. So I'm just going to quickly flick back to my screen, and we're going to just call that one out. So what you'll see here is if we go to our start page,
do me a favor, Stephen,
for
just
devices,
zoom just a smidge on your screen.
I can do that indeed. How's that? Better?
Yeah.
Cool. And I'm just going to collapse this down and collapse this down. What you'll see is we have Windows, iOS, Mac OS, Android, and Linux. So the 5 primary OSs that are supported. Cool. But let's go and scroll down, and we have other devices. Chrome OS in preview. So we've spoken about Chrome OS previously, but this is where we're talking about compliance for Chrome OS. And you'll note right here, we don't actually have an option to create Chrome OS profiles. Okay, well, where do we do that? We do that over here in Google Land. So admin.google.com. We can then go in here and we can create compliance policies for that device. I haven't set that up yet. That's a future problem. But if we expand this out and we go here to settings, I think it's going to be under rules. I've not actually gone looking into this. But you'll note on the device we had a compliant device. Oh, cool. I don't have access. Yay.
Yeah. But I mean, essentially the point here is that Intune is not an MDM for Chrome OS. You still go to the Google portal to manage the MDM side of things.
Correct.
What we're trying to do is treat Chrome OS like every other device that potentially could access company resources, and we want to consume the compliance information within Intune, or within, really in this case, within Intra,
Yes.
so that we can establish an authentication state, or not a compliant state for the device,
compliant
to then
state for the
allow
device
it to get
to be
in.
able to say yes.
Yep.
So it's that trust but verify scenario of, hey, yep, we need you to just go and look here and tell me, do you meet my requirements? Yes, no. So just wanted to call that out because it's in the full fairness of all of the OSs that we're using. Obviously, we haven't spoken about any of the variants of Windows, and we probably won't because they're complicated and time consuming. So we're just going to lump them into Windows. And that's the same with Android in this scenario. They all look the same. It's just how they apply is slightly different. If it's a work profile, it's just a compliance policy for the work profile. And then you sit there and go, well, if it's outside the work profile, you don't have access to corporate resources anyway. So, and it's just things like that. So I just wanted to call that out.
Cool. Well, I think that's about it.
Yeah, I think so too.
Cool. Well,
in a succinct 41 minutes.
Yeah. Hopefully you found this collective. I don't know. This is. I'm feeling indifferent at this point on our. This is our first one. We were really just trying to combine everything all into one shot here.
Yep.
So
let us know in the comments on the socials if you think this model works, or if we should be sitting there and doing each one individually and giving its own airtime. We're very interested.
I mean, the alternative would be, a single video for setting up a compliance policy, and then do it for a particular OS, and then doing the video,
which is what we were doing.
The deal, yeah. And then we're going to end up with 10 different videos for the different platforms.
And it'll take too long, which is part of why we're doing this.
Right. So, and I guess the other way to think about it is, if you only see the one, we have to put all the same content in the front of each of them, instead of kind of trying to combine them together. So yeah, let us know what you think about these. If you've even made it this far, that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that's it. We'll
awesome.
catch you on the next one.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
See you.
Thanks, Adam.